2 weeks ago, my partner, 25 years old, and I, a 28-year-old man, were engaged. We've been dating for the past 5 years. I was beat when I got home from work 3 weeks ago. She was seated at the dining table with her buddy Mike when I got home. I approached my girlfriend, gave her a cheek kiss, and made out with Mike. Since I knew him well and he had known my fiancée since they were little, I didn't really give his presence much thought. I asked him if he wanted something to drink, like a beer, but he said he was here to chat to me. At first, I couldn't quite understand, but as soon as I saw their grave expressions, I realized something major was wrong. I also took a seat at the table and got a beer from the refrigerator. They got to chatting about how Mike and I had become close over the past few years and other things. I was just sitting there, dumbfounded. I didn't get what they were attempting to say. Mike and I were, I suppose, social pals. I would hang out with him if we happened to be at the same party, but we never really went out together or planned separate activities together. I simply told them to cut to the chase and not waste any more words. I was worn out and didn't want to waste any more time arguing the point. Mike recently lost his job and was kicked out of his apartment, so my girlfriend asked if it would be alright if he stayed over for a few weeks. I assured her that he was welcome to stay as long as he cleaned up after himself and did domestic chores like bringing out the trash. He stood up, embraced me tightly, and said, "Thank you." I had no idea this man was a dirty drunk. Things weren't too horrible throughout the first week. He basically stayed to himself, completed the tasks I gave him, and it was enjoyable to have a company to watch hoops with in the house. After the first week, everything drastically changed. His soiled socks crammed onto our couch, empty beer cans all over the place, and other things caught my attention. When I questioned him about it, all he said was that it would never happen again and that he was sorry. My fiancée informed me, but she advised me to be patient with him as he was going through a difficult period and would soon recover. Things simply get worse. It was when I noticed desiccated vomit on our toilet seat that I began to assume he was an alcoholic. Empty bottles of vodka, whiskey, and rum began to appear everywhere. I brought it up to him repeatedly, but he responded with the same indifference. I was irritated even more by my fiancée's lack of concern. When I got home from work 5 days earlier, our apartment was a complete disaster. I completely lost it. When I burst into the guest room, he was sitting on a bed drinking beer. I just lost it over him. I was being tried to calm down by my girlfriend, but I was unmoving. I gave him a 2-day deadline to tidy my apartment and leave, failing which I would have called the police. I suppose he took offense at something I said. He simply jumped out of bed and lunged towards me. All I can recall is that I struck my head on something harsh when he rammed me into the wall behind me. I see an officer pointing a flashlight at my face the next thing I know. He informed me that Mike was secure and that I couldn't harm him when I asked where he was. I was pulled off the floor and taken outside by him and another police officer. I caught Mike and my girlfriend chatting with a police officer. I'm drifting in and out of consciousness at this point. I wanted to say something to her when she saw me being carried down the stairs like a rag doll, but my head ached too much for me to formulate a coherent phrase. After getting into the police vehicle, I was taken to the station and placed in a holding cell. They just gave me the "I have the right to remain silent" BS when I asked them why over and again. I recall trying to make sense of what had happened while sitting in the detention cell, feeling as though my skull would blow up at any moment. I seem to recall falling asleep once, and having a police officer wake me up. He told me I was lucky that they didn't charge me and that I may go. I could actually make sentences at this time, and my headache felt considerably better. I asked him to tell me what had transpired. They informed me that my fiancée had called to say that I had started drinking again and had become very violent, and that her friend had had to control me in order to prevent me from injuring her. I was completely perplexed. Who became violent, and who was drinking? He told me the same story once more. I was really pissed off now. I texted my dad to come get me and transport me to my apartment as soon as I received my phone back. I urged him to drive me home when they tried to ask why I had spent the night in jail. I just ran upstairs when I got there to make sure my front door wasn't locked, and I was shocked to see that it was. Mike was seated on a couch with my ex-fiancée. Because her mascara was streaming down her face, I could tell she had been sobbing. She leapt up to give me an embrace, but I urged her to get the hell out of my flat and shoved her away. She attempted to plead and beg, but I instructed her to stop, pack a few necessities, and leave. She begged a little longer before leaving. I claimed to have been sent home from the hospital due to an injury, so I immediately called in sick from work. I felt as though I was in a fever dream the entire day. Nothing seemed to make sense. My fiancé lied to the police. Why? I spent the entire day thinking about that. I tried to ignore her numerous attempts to call till I was unable to resist any longer. I answered the phone and asked her to tell me everything and to never even consider lying to me. In the end, she told me that they both became panicked after Mike knocked me out. Since Mike was already on probation and this would likely ruin his life, she was afraid to call the police and Mike. She informed me that, in the heat of the moment, she made the foolish decision to say that Mike shielded her from my attack and unintentionally knocked me unconscious. She argues that because Mike had a criminal record and I did not, I could afford it. I hung up because I was tired of listening. She tried to call me numerous times and sent me a ton of apology texts, but I had had enough. I went to the hospital the day after I started throwing up at random, and was told I had a concussion and would have to stay at home for the next month. This really hurts me. What made her pick her friend over me? How come she attempted to destroy my life in an effort to save her friend? She attempted to visit multiple times daily, but I never even had the courage to respond. All the while I blocked her, but not now. Her mother texted me to say that she attempted an overdose on medications yesterday and was admitted to the hospital. She just wanted to see me once more. I really have regret ignoring her after reading this. To be precise, I haven't replied to her mother or anybody else. My parents are the only people who knew, aside from those who were directly involved, and my mother is currently caring for me. I'm genuinely torn. I still love her and believe she made a sincere mistake, but on the one hand, I feel like leaving our relationship because of what she did. I want to stop experiencing pain. I would definitely end my life if I erased the last 5 years of it because it is such a mess. I don't want to watch the one I love most getting lost because I'm neglecting her. I have no desire to make my poor mother provide me with free care for a month. It seems like my fiancé should be in charge of it now. I've finished everything. The only things keeping me sane are my phone and laptop, as I spend the entire day wedged into bed. I begin shivering violently and experiencing random panic episodes. Please let me know what to do. Is it wrong of me to make her and ignore her? Is it time for me to let her come see me? Regarding the most recent comments, raise your hands if you think A is hitting Mike. She is undoubtedly giving Mikey, an evicted, jobless, intoxicated man on probation, a serious beating. I'm shaking my stupid head, what a prize. She made a really sensible choice. I've seen it a million times, not the a-hole. These ladies are attention-seeking and validation-hungry, and you can't possibly compete with someone who spends their entire day doing nothing. They can just sit there, pay attention to them, and validate everything they say, until, bam, a second guy shows up. Mike hurt your head, and they ought to have gotten an ambulance. They could have taken your life by lying to the police, holding up your medical care, and then delaying it even longer by putting you in jail. And the reason for your month-long bed rest may be that you delayed seeking emergency medical attention. Head traumas are serious conditions. I would text her to get her to confess to everything, and then I would file charges. Furthermore, you now have an arrest record if you were arrested. Not A. She's probably banging Mike in addition to having mental health issues. You were lucky enough to escape a bullet. Mike was chosen by her over you. You should notify the authorities to her whereabouts if you think she is indeed suicidal. Exercise caution. There is now proof on paper that you defeated her. Hence, you will end yourself in jail if you allow her to visit and play the same card. She may not be truly suicidal. She most likely took some medication to control OP, but far fewer than the lethal amount. It's an appeal for help. Opie needs to contact Adult Protective Services if she tries to use self-harm as a form of blackmail. No, Opie can just keep on without talking to anyone, and there won't be any way to find out if she's considering suicide. Block her family as well. They should contact the police to inquire about her well-being if she resides with them or communicates with them. He should just avoid her if she is dead or appears to be. Next article. Am I a bad person for being relieved that I won't have children? During roughly 5 months, I, a 24-year-old man, casually dated a 23-year-old woman who, despite using birth control, became pregnant. I urged her to end the pregnancy since I no longer want to be a father. If she didn't, I would not be present and I would want to take a DNA test after the baby is born before I would be involved in any way. For whatever reason, she chose to keep the child even though either of us had the resources to care for it. At the 4th month, I lost interest in us because I was so irritated with us. She lost her pregnancy. Her friend told me about it and said that she was devastated. I can now sympathize with her for the physical suffering she endures, but the outcome was excellent for me, and I was actually quite pleased with it. I didn't have to become a father anymore. My friends and I went out to celebrate by having a drink and raising a toast to the fact that I wouldn't have to become a father. Eventually, word of our actions spread, reaching Maya and her friends. As a result of my friends and hers happiness over her miscarriage, she has started to harass us. We did not, in my opinion, expressly celebrate her miscarriage, but rather the fact that I would not be compelled to become a father. Furthermore, it seems to me that it is unrelated to her in any way. Is that me, Reddit the a-hole? I have 2 opinions for you. Not the a-hole for finding happiness in the knowledge that you will not become a father. You weren't in a position to become a father financially, you weren't ready for the duty, and you didn't want the responsibility. However, the manner in which you conveyed that delight is reprehensible. It would have been acceptable if you had celebrated at home and shared a celebratory drink with your friend, toasting to not being a father. However, the truth remains that you publicly celebrated the girl's miscarriage by going out and about. And that's just incredibly bad taste, my friend. This is a fair appraisal in this case. You are not a bad person for feeling happy. You're not a dad. You are the biggest loser for celebrating in this manner. The next time, don't rejoice over the flawed event that brought it about. Just rejoice that you do not have children. Ideally, there won't be another one, and if you do get someone pregnant again, you'll be prepared. For the record, there are many more forms of contraception besides birth control. If you don't want children, using contraception is not simply the responsibility of women. You have to participate equally in that, haha. I say the same thing to my brothers every time. There are alternatives for both men and women, as I mentioned before, so they dismiss the argument that But it doesn't feel the same if you use a rubber. In the end, are you going to give in and continue to prevent children from entering the world, or are you going to do what seems right and run the chance of having a child you aren't ready for? Ideas to ponder. In any case, good luck, and if you have the opportunity, please accept my sincere apologies. If you'd rather not become a father, wear rubbers or have a vasectomy, sir, you have to start taking responsibility for your own birth control. When he decides to climax inside of a lady, he is solely responsible for the destination of his seeds. Whether she uses hormonal birth control, has an IUD, or anything else, he has decided to become pregnant. He deserves every consequence because he chose to take a pregnancy risk. He should have a vasectomy, or use rubbers if he wants to avoid taking the chance of getting pregnant. Yes, it makes no difference at all if their partner uses an IUD, birth control, or anything else. Men should always wear protection 100% of the time if they don't want to take the chance of getting pregnant. Previous story. Am I a bad person for utilizing my wife's hall passes? Alright, I'm in a difficult circumstance at the moment. In the 7th year of our marriage, my wife conducted an affair for 6 months before being discovered. It was a startling and terrible event. She obviously offered me a hall pass for each month that she was having an affair. To return to our previous state, years of marital therapy were necessary. I made advantage of the hall passes that my spouse granted me back when we first reconciled. My wife was unaware that I had slept with 2 separate ladies on 3 separate occasions. She gave me the passes with various instructions on them. First, she must not ask to know how to use the hall pass. Second, if she asks, I must honestly and completely respond. Third, protection is essential. And fourth, there can be no emotional attachment. I complied with every rule. To be completely honest, it also helped me to lessen my animosity against her. I suppose that's just how getting even feels. It's a fact, not that that's a fantastic thing. 5 years have passed since everything happened, and we were doing well. She made the sudden decision to ask me about the hall passes last week. As she requested, I answered her honestly. I responded to each query she posed. Perhaps I shouldn't have told the truth. She is depressed and doesn't even look me in the eyes as she thinks this. I am aware that this necessitates further marital therapy for us as well as possibly individual therapy. Before she asked, I couldn't even recall the hall passes and women, but now I feel terrible. Was I the jerk? Regarding the comments, you felt awful because she cheated. She felt horrible, so she muttered something to make herself feel better and give you the impression that you had earned a little revenge on her. After you went out and had a terrific time, she is now feeling just as bad as you did. Unexpectedly, 2 persons are now miserable. Why am I giggling? You received what she gave you. She didn't even really. She gave him permission to sleep with 2 individuals as long as he followed her guidelines. She was a 6-month cheater on him. Yes, as I had intended to say, she cheated on me more than 6 times, both physically and emotionally. It isn't even close to being fair to let him sleep with 6 different people. He ought to have had a full-fledged 6-month affair if that's what he desired. What could that possibly have achieved? He ought to have divorced her if he truly wanted to get revenge. Not a-hole, but marriage isn't something you keep score on behavior. You don't ask questions you don't want to hear the answers to for this reason. The hall passes were fictitious up until now. She might have hoped that you never used them if things got better to the point where you two were quite happy. But you were truthful when you asked. She can't act as though you haven't dated someone else anymore. These are the results of what she did. She must own that she was the one who initiated this. She lied. She suggested that you get hall passes. Years ago, she had the option to leave after cheating. She made the decision to stay. She made the offer, but I promise she didn't realize it would hurt this much. She most likely felt desperate, and would have done anything to get you to stay. I understand that you didn't want guidance, but I strongly advise you to schedule the couples therapy sessions. This isn't your average case of infidelity. As adults, you both reached a decision. It's up to you both how you move on in your relationship. She doubted he would make use of them. Those were the meaningless words of a liar. Yes, a cunning liar engaging in their finest activity. Then become angry over it. He is still unaware of the extent of his deception. It's not proof that your partner cheated once if you catch them once. It doesn't mean that they gave up lying either. I adore the restriction prohibiting emotional attachment during her 7-month affair. She's basically a bad person in every way. Yes, it is impossible to be in a real relationship. I am your completely devoted wife, and I would never do that, so that would be unjust to me. To be honest, I would be furious with her for her response. What is causing your upset? Did you think I would never utilize these hall passes when you gave them to me? Were they an attempt to coerce me into rejoining this marriage? Was this just another lie you used to achieve what you wanted, with no regard for my feelings or the harm you caused?